Hello, 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 Debbie, Joel, how you guys doing?
I'm doing awesome, Bob.
Awesome.
So excited to have you guys here. We're gonna let everybody kind of slide in the room here as we open this thing up. Everybody piles in here all at once. Listen, welcome everybody. We're gonna have Debbie and Joel in here talking about persuasive selling and how you guys can just get better at persuading people to kind of take the actions that we're interested in. I want to make sure as we get started, and I'm going to turn this thing over to them. You guys aren't going to hear much from me today at all. I want to make sure everybody knows where the chat is. So go find the chat right now and do me a favor. Just check in, and maybe as a check-in, who's the last person you had to persuade? Joel, Debbie, I have a 3 and a 4-year-old at home, and I had to try to persuade those boys to leave the house to go to school this morning. And Joel, I'm sure I'm going to be furiously taking notes here, Debbie, with you guys today, right? Because I need to be able to persuade those boys a little bit more. But you know, this concept of persuasion, it helps us as salespeople, right? To master these tools, to be able to build rapport with people and get agreement is ultimately what we're seeking often in our business. So what are some of these people? Olympia. Awesome.
I love it though. They're talking about family, right? Persuading family. And you know, Joel and I often talk about this is the gift that keeps on giving. When they master these skills, not only do they move their clients forward more effectively, but everyone in their life becomes so much easier to communicate with. So
absolutely. So half of it, most everybody, it's just because we're kind of getting our days going here. The last person they had to persuade was a kid or the spouse or my mom, right? The gym membership salesperson. There you go, Heather. We'll pick some skills up today. Maybe we can get you a more affordable gym membership. All right, Debbie, I'm going to get out of the way. I'm going to turn it over to you and Joel, and I'm going to sit back and take some notes, actually.
Well, perfect. And, you know, most of this is going to be Joel's party because he is the master at neuro persuasion. But I do want to say hello to all of you. And hey, Heather, great to see you, and Darcy and Stacy and you know, some of our great clients and friends. Some of you I've not met, and you may be thinking, you know, we know Bob, we know Ben, who the heck is Debbie? Well, Ben is my partner in forward coaching. So I used to be Ben's coach about 13 years ago. I even had the pleasure of working with Joel many years ago. So we all go back a long ways. And, you know, Ben feels like this is such a fabulous topic, especially when you are working in your Brivity CRM and you're calling your leads, you're calling your sphere. Some of the leads are cold and we really have to engage and inspire them. So we asked Joel to come today. Some of you may have heard him a few months ago, but come back today and share some really great fresh content. So Joel, I believe you have control of the slides. So I'm going to let you move us forward. And guys, we have a very specific goal today. We want to give you some amazing content. And my goal is that you're going to leave this webinar and you're going to have a breakthrough. You're going to have a new tool, a new idea, a new technique that will allow you to create agreements in every appointment, every time, right? Because we know out there today, competition is fierce. I mean, what is the number one thing everyone wants more of right now? Listings, right? So we know all of your markets, hyper competitive, lots of pressure to find great listing inventory. And one of the reasons I'm always excited when I see you all, especially as I look at some of the names in the chat box, I know you guys are veterans. Many of you have been at this for a long time, and yet you're here to learn, to grow, because we've got to, right? You know, I heard something years ago, somewhere someone's practicing, and if you're not practicing, when they meet you, they will beat you. And we really believe, Joel and I and Ben, we passionately believe that when you can learn to sell without gimmicks, without pressure, without resistance, you'll sell more in less time, but less stress. Right? You'll enjoy that process more because there's no conflict, and it's actually going to take you fewer leads to get the deals, to get the business you need. And what we all want is we want to have happy clients in the process. And let's face it, it's a little bit crazy in the world the last, 12, 18 months or so. People are very stressed out. Real estate always stresses them out. So more than ever, we have to be very smooth and persuasive in our conversation. So let's make a deal. Here's our deal. We're going to promise you, pack as much content in today's session as we possibly can. And when you stay on until the end, we're going to answer questions. So first of all, Joel is going to stay on until the very end so that he can even do some on-the-spot organic role play with you. So as we go on today, if you want to type into the chat box any objection, any tough challenge you're having, a script you need, you can type that in. We won't pay attention to it until the end, but we're going to save some time at the end. Also, I don't want you guys to, Joel is he's broken these tips down to 3 very great specific things you can take out and put into action. Please don't, though, feel any anxiety about, oh my gosh, how am I going to master this? I love it. I want more. Because if you do feel that way, with your permission at the end, we'll just take 5 minutes or so and we'll share something that Joel has launching next week. And then he's going to stay on until the end. So let me introduce Joel, and I'm going to get out of the way so we can get this party started. You might want, go ahead. Bob, did you want to jump in with something? Nope. Okay. Want to make sure. So you might be wondering, why does it matter that Joel was an engineer? Let me ask you guys, have you ever had a super high C engineer as a client? I'm sure you have. And were they easy to work with? Go ahead and type it in the chat box if you want to, because probably not, right? And so Joel, as an engineer, came into the real estate business, and Joel would admit to you, he wasn't necessarily a natural born salesperson, right? Some of you maybe are. Joel admits he was not. And so he had to learn. We often say we had to learn the hard way. We want to help you cheat and do it the easier way. So he had to learn how to be a better communicator, more persuasive. He became very successful at that process, became an NLP master practitioner, hypnotist, negotiation specialist. And Joel, I believe you even trained with the team that trains the CIA on how to negotiate. Is that correct? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I got an invite to go into the CIA's lie detection training program. Yeah.
So he spent a lot of years to perfect this, and we're going to break it down to some down and dirty techniques. He is still an active real estate broker, investor. So this is not something used in theory. He's using it every day, and he has trained thousands of real estate brokers, many of our forward coaching clients, many of the people that are leaders on Ben Kinney's team credit Joel with their success. So Joel, without further ado, I would like to turn them over to you. So let's get this party started.
Awesome. Wow. Thank you, Debbie and Bob, for the crazy warm introduction. Thank you. Thank you. So I just want to start with a question to all of you listening. If you could eliminate misunderstandings and miscommunications, like what would happen? And how many of those are there in your world? So in my background as an engineer, I learned how to use blueprints to communicate, to get ideas across with clarity. And what was so interesting is miscommunications are very rare between engineers, and arguments very rare. As a hypnotist, I learned some techniques to get to the cause of an issue without stirring up more conflict or more arguments. I don't like to argue. I like to solve. So, my goal is that how do I apply all of this to business? So with that in mind, consider this. Opportunities are all around you. I like to say we're standing in a river of opportunities and we don't even see them go by. So all these opportunities are inside relationships, and relationships are nothing more than the conversations that you're having. So for example, somebody lists their house, somebody that you know lists their house, but not with you, right? There was an opportunity right there. What happened? Did they not know you sold real estate? Did they think you were too busy? Like literally we tripped over that one and didn't get it. So think of it this way. Selling is a service that involves communicating with people and finding out what they want, and then helping solve the barriers to get them there. That's it. So this means that asking questions and hearing, understanding their answers is the only way to create and deliver a solution. So make no mistake about it. You are a professional communicator. This is what you do for a living. You get paid to communicate with people. So setting appointments, listing a house, securing a buyer, recruiting, price reductions, handling objections, getting a second date with, that special one. All of these are based on our ability to communicate, all of them. So that is the foundation for every relationship. And because I can only sell my house so many times, I need relationships with other people. So I'm curious, have you received calls from a telemarketer who was very obviously using a canned pitch? Right? Have you had that? Wait, this happened to you, right? They're not just calling me. So what's your first reflex when you get that call, right? Oh, God, I thought I recognized that number. Now I'm on the phone with some telemarketer. So why is that so repelling? Why do we try to get out of those as fast as we can? I don't know. Maybe they were pushy. Maybe they had an agenda. Maybe they were trying to sell you something you didn't need or want. Maybe it was the busiest time of your day and you shouldn't have answered that call and you thought you recognized the number. All of these reasons to be repelled from the telemarketer all boil down to the same thing. In fact, it's the number one complaint about salespeople is they didn't listen. They didn't listen. Remember, selling is a service that involves communicating with people, finding out what they want, and solving the barriers to get them there. So it's really our job to host a discovery conversation that makes both of us more clear, right? That involves getting in rapport, creating a space where they feel compelled to tell the truth, or they don't feel like they need to hide and protect themselves. And I'm not telling you how much I owe, right? Those are all things that go wrong by not creating this level of rapport. So what about when you're the salesperson, right? Obviously, we don't like somebody trying to pitch us. What happens when you're the salesperson and something goes sideways? Well, maybe you didn't hear them. Maybe you did hear them, but you were thinking ahead for the solution. Maybe their accent, their tone, their volume, their speed was hard for you to follow. Maybe they said, we need a mother-in-law suite. And then you immediately thought like, wow, how lucky are you? My mother-in-law is not very sweet. Like lots of things could go sideways, right? Worst of all, maybe you were trying to convince them to buy or sell or hire you. So let's start here. While convincing can sometimes work, it creates a relationship dynamic that's unhealthy and unstable. And that's not the kind of relationship that I want to have. So serious question for you, regardless of your current position, right? I'm going to make this apolitical. So yes or no answers only. I'm going to ask you a question. Everybody type it in the chat box. Leading up to the presidential election, did anybody attempt to convince you that you should believe what they believe? Right? Yes or no? Did any? You guys see the chat box? It's like, brrr, right? So the real question is, did it work? Right? Did their impassioned speeches get you to change your vote? Right? The chat box is going nuts. Everybody's saying, nope, 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 nope. Right? So if everybody's trying to get you to change your vote, change your mind, and none of it worked, what are we doing? What are we doing? So I'm going to make a quick distinction, and then I'm going to give you some tools. So the quick distinction is, do you remember the telephone game when you were a kid, right? We did this when I was in kindergarten or first grade or something. You get a line of 10 or 20 kids and you tell the first kid some message, right? You say, hey, here's the message. Exactly, verbatim. I want you to repeat it verbatim to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And you tell the first one something and they tell the second one and the third one and the fourth one. And then at the other end of the line, you see what the message is. Is it the same message? Not even close. I mean, you're lucky if it's in the ballpark. At every step, there's a little something happened. So in your life, did your client say, I'll be there in 10 or I'll be there at 10? Right? Which did they say, or which did you hear? So Either one, it produces the same outcome. Somewhere the ball gets dropped. I don't know if they miscommunicated or if I misheard, whatever. I don't know. So the question is, how often does this happen? Does it happen without me even knowing it? Yeah, all the time. So I'm going to give you 3 tools today that are designed to eliminate miscommunications, designed to eliminate misunderstandings. And my goal, right? I don't like to fight. I like to solve problems, and fighting doesn't solve anything. So as my nerd engineer brain, fighting just feels like a waste of time and effort. So it doesn't solve anything. So I like sales resistance free. So I'm going to give you that today. There's so many things that we could cover today. Yet Bob asked me to put together something that would be immediately applicable, something literally you can use it later today. So that's what we're up to today. So let's roll up our sleeves and jump into the deep end. So secret number 1 is decisions are based on our values. So where did you get your values? Are they really yours, or did you inherit them from whoever house trained you, right? If you were born in that end of the world, if you were born in certain countries, your default is you're probably Buddhist. If you're born in another country, your default is you're probably Hindu. If you're born in this country, you're probably Judeo-Christian, right? So are they really your values? So exactly how do these values, and some values are serving us and some values are not serving us. So the question for us, though, is how do these values determine buying decisions? So quick example. These 3 vehicles represent 3 friends of mine. So one friend of mine only buys American vehicles, right? Usually pickup trucks. So why only that? He's a veteran. And the most important thing for him is to spend his money America first. Right? Keep the money here. Jobs for my friends. I fought and buried my friends for this country first. So is that right or wrong? I don't know. I have no idea. But it's how that person makes decisions. So I have another friend who only buys Japanese cars. Why? Well, he's a CPA. His priorities are efficiency, reliability, low maintenance. Is that right or wrong? I don't know. Those are his values. I have another friend that only buys high-end German cars. Why is that? Because the most important thing for him is the safety of his wife and family. And the first time he bought one of those big German cars, his insurance rates went down. So he called the insurance company and said, why are my rates, this car's way more expensive than my last car. How's it possible that my insurance is lower? And the insurance people said, nobody dies in those cars. Nobody dies in that car. So he only drives big German cars. So how hard would it be to sell that big, heavy German car to the CPA, right? How about to sell the Japanese car to the veteran? So I know you guys aren't selling cars. I just wanted you to have that example. So how can we apply this to real estate? Well, first, we're going to discover and unlock the client's values by asking criteria questions. So remember what they want. It's not as important as why they want it. So the goal of this technique, this is one of 3 for today. The goal of this technique is to understand the values that the client uses to make decisions, right? There's several of these, but one that we're going to cover today, one of those criteria questions is what's important about. Now, big difference between why do you want that? What's important about? So what's important about what? About whatever it is that they want. What's important about moving to Colorado? What's important about owning a home of your own? What's important about owning a bunch of rental properties? What's important about getting a 5-bedroom house? Whatever. So I might need to ask this question a couple of times to get to the core of the issue. Okay. So say your client says, we want to downsize, right? We want a smaller house. We don't need this big old thing. We want to downsize to a smaller place. Great. So the first thing out of my mouth is I'm going to say, okay, great. I'd love to help you. And I'm curious, what's important about downsizing to a smaller home? And they're going to say whatever they say. In this example, they say, well, it's cheaper, lower our expenses. Okay, well, that's helpful. That doesn't feel like a home run yet. So I might ask it again. Great. What's important about lowering those expenses? And they might say, oh, if I could lower them down to here, I could pay cash. My equity would pay cash for a smaller home. I could retire early. Okay, now it's getting a little interesting. So I might say, great, congratulations. And if you could retire early, what would that do for you? Oh my gosh, I could travel, I could spend time with my kids, I could see my grandkids, I could take base jumping lessons, I could snowboard the Alps. This is why I've been working so hard. This is the life I've been wanting. All right, so here's the question. As a realtor, as an agent, a broker, a salesperson, do you want to be the agent to help these people downsize? Or do you want to be the one to help them retire early so they can visit their grandkids, travel the world, and live the life of their dreams? Right? I want the second one. And it's not until I unlock their values that I know what's really driving their behavior. Here's the good part too, is not only does, by asking these questions, their values, their goals, their dreams, not only sometimes it's the first time they say them out loud. So don't be surprised if you get an emotional response, but it also binds those to you, to me. I'm not just there trying to sell them a house. Now that I'm there asking these questions, now what's really on the table is, having them live the life of their dreams. All right. So that's tool number one. Figure out their values. Somebody just said, wow, I just got emotional hearing me do this example. Yeah. What I'm looking for is I want to find out what's under the crust, right? I want to get to the heart of the issue. So thank you for whoever typed that.
That was me, Joel.
That was you.
Yeah. Hearing the idea that somebody might be saying out loud for the first time, the things that are really their values wrapped around that transaction I'm going to do it. That is super powerful. It's
makes huge.
Emotional a little bit. Yeah.
And it transforms my relationship with people. So I don't have these lame, superficial, topical things. No, I want relationships that are solid and deep, and I want it to be legitimate and have merit. So I'm glad you liked that one, Bob. Thank you. Yeah. And I said, I don't know who wrote that because on my thing here, it says training. So I should have known. Yeah. It doesn't say Bob. So I should have known that, Bob. Thanks, Bob.
Yep.
All right. So that was one. Let's jump to another tool, another technique. So check out this little cartoon. The first guy says, and then I was thrown into prison again. And the other guy says, that reminds me of the 3 times I was shipwrecked. So have you heard conversations like this before? I don't know, maybe you've been in some. So what's really happening here? Well, maybe they're attempting to impress the other person. Maybe they're trying to gain acceptance by playing the Me Too game. Maybe they're attempting to get some social credit. Maybe they're, virtue signaling. Could be a lot of things. So the question is, are either of these characters making any real progress? Or are they just speaking for acknowledgement? Right? I think they're speaking for acknowledgement. So tool and insight and technique number 2 is people will defend their beliefs even when they're not accurate. Let me say this one again. This is huge. People will defend their beliefs even when they're not accurate. So consider that until 500 years ago, it was universally accepted that the earth was the center of the universe and the sun rotated around the earth. And voicing beliefs other than the universally accepted narrative would make you a heretic. Like people would get burned at the stake for that. This was the beginning of cancel culture, sadly. So just keep in mind, people like to be right. And when our existing beliefs get challenged, those challenges to our belief structure are subconsciously viewed as threats. So simply telling the truth can make you a threat to their worldview. So just ask yourself, you ever had a client where they got really upset when you told them your price opinion about the house? Well, I think the house is worth this. And they got mad and you had all the data to support you. So type that in the chat box. Has that ever happened? You tell somebody, hey, look at this comp, look at that comp, here's the value. And they get really upset and you're just showing them the values. Have you guys had that experience? Right? You're being straight with them and it upsets them. Yep. Jim says at least once a week. Yeah, it happens all the time. So let's let's say that you hear, hey, look, my house is special. The other agent said they could get at least 650. No, trust me, my house is special. You see this red wall right here? It's got 4 coats of paint. I painted it myself. I dyed it red with my own blood. Yeah. So a truthful response might be, yeah, the same model just sold right around the corner for $575. So $75,000. Somebody just said, wow, I just had that same seller. So a truthful response might be, yeah, but the one right across the street's the same model. It's $575. So even if you're 100% correct and the data supports you and you're not biased because it's not your house, you're way more objective, and the client's way off base, correcting them might win the point, maybe. And it's likely going to cost you the client, because working with you would be admitting they were wrong. That hurts. So this is where you might hear, we need to think about it. We're now all of a sudden we're not sure. We need to think about it. We need to pray about it. We need to do, right? That's a sign that we got off the rails somewhere. So if giving somebody a truthful response means that we are jeopardizing the relationship with the client, then how do we communicate with people if giving them the truth gets us in trouble and costs us the relationship? That's a problem. So welcome to tool technique number 2 called agreement frames. So an agreement frame is, I'm going to find the place that I do agree with their position, and I'm going to agree with that. Then I'm going to say, and I'm going to add something to it. Okay. So I might say, they said, hey, my house is special. I want 650. I might say, yeah, your house is beautiful. Yeah. I'd love to sell it for 650. What did I just do? I just took their side. I just stepped right over making them wrong. And I said, yep, your house is beautiful. I'd love to sell it for 650. And let's look at this too. Let's consider this other thing as well. So instead of saying, no, that's foolish because look at that doesn't work, but look at this, I'm going to say, yeah, that's awesome. Your house is beautiful. And right, I might say, excellent. Sounds like you want to maximize your equity into the next purchase. And let's take a look at these comps, right? I might say, wow, that must mean your property's in amazing condition. And let's take a look at these comps. So I'm going to take their side, but I'm not going to accept the exact detail. I'm not going to say, yes, I agree, 650 is the magic number. No, I'm going to say, yeah, I agree. We want to get as much money as possible. And let's take a look at the comps. So can you feel the difference just by taking their side? Remember, when people are looking to hire a real estate agent, real estate broker, they're looking for somebody to represent them. And if you have views that are making their views wrong, then you're not representing them. So we need to, elicit them to be on the same team. So the goal of this technique is to demonstrate that we heard them and that we're on the same team, right? If they say my house is worth 650 and you say, well, let's take a look at these comps, 575, right? They have no indicator that I even heard them. So remember, we still haven't addressed the belief issue. They still might think 650, but instead of they say 650 and I go, no, 575. Now we're having an argument. Now somebody's going to be right and somebody's going to be wrong. And that's exactly what I want to avoid. So the goal of this technique, the goal of the agreement frame is to create open dialogue and to avoid the argument, right? I want to be on their side. All right, let's look at another example of the agreement frame. I'm going to wait and just see what the market does. Are you guys hearing that right now? Are you having buyers that are like, I'm going to wait and see what happens. I'll wait until the prices come back down. Right? Once in a while, you guys hearing that in this market? So, but what does this really mean? Right? What is the true meaning behind, I'm going to wait and see what the market does? I don't know. Maybe their wealth is tied up in the stock market and they had a big year. Maybe they own tons of real estate and they're afraid this is going to be like '07 again. And they're wondering if they should liquidate or buy more and they're undecided. right? Maybe this, I'm going to wait and see what the market does. Maybe this is a deflection, a stall tactic, a smokescreen. Maybe they think they can't qualify and they're too embarrassed to say, I talked to the lender and my credits, I can't do that. I don't know. The real issue here is I don't know which one of those meanings is their meaning, right? If they say, I'm going to wait, which one of those is true? Are they waiting because their money's here, because they don't know if they should buy or sell? Are they deflecting me? I don't know which one of those meanings is their meaning. So the real question is, what part of their statement do I agree with? I'm going to wait and see what the market does. So what part of that can I easily agree with, right? So I might say, yep, the market is changing and let's take a look at this, right? Or, yeah, I can appreciate being strategic before making those decisions, right? And then the technique we just did too, we can certainly say, oh, you want to wait and see what the market does. What's important about waiting? So I could get to the real core of what's driving that. And then I could say, yeah, it is changing. And let's take a look at this. All right. So the goal here is to take their side and to get to the heart of what's really driving their position. Now, we still didn't address the belief issue, right? We're going to do that next. The goal here is make them right and create this open dialogue. I want to completely avoid the yes, no, right, wrong, right? I don't want to be right because that makes them wrong. I don't want them to be right. It makes me wrong. I want to find a place where we're all getting along. All right. I'm just quickly, it feels like I'm going really fast. I'm just checking in with all of you. Is this helpful so far? Has this been impactful? Has what we've covered been helpful? Can you put this stuff to use? Has it been worth your time so far? Because we haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet. Everybody's saying, yes, very helpful, amazing, awesome. Awesome. Matthew, Kathy, Leah, thank you. Awesome. Everybody says yes. Perfect. All right. If anybody feels like we're way off topic, right, jump. So I love it that you guys are getting good takeaways already. Okay, good. So now that we've demonstrated, I'm going to say this really slow and I want you to get it. Now that we've demonstrated to the client that we are not a threat to their belief structure, right? One more time. Now that we've demonstrated that we're not a threat to their belief structure, how can we address the belief, right? There's some belief in there, like they think it's worth more than the comps. So we still need to address that belief. So in order to answer this, what do we do about it? We're going to start by looking at, we're going to explore bias, right? Everybody's got a little bias. That's exactly what we're talking about, right? My house is special. They have bias. It's their house. So all of us, everybody, all of us, we have some confirmation bias. So what this means, like these two characters, even though they're looking at the same image, these two people might be arguing forever because what they see from their perspective supports their existing belief. So the more they look, the more right they feel. And the more right they feel, the more contrary they are to the other person, right? So if you and I were to stand here face to face, toe to toe, right? We're having a conversation 2 feet apart. And I said, okay, really quickly, on the count of 3, everybody point to the left. 1, 2, 3, go. Right? And I'm pointing to the left and you're pointing to the left, but we're pointing in opposite directions, right? Because our perspective changes how it is for us. So, by the way, if you haven't seen it yet, be sure to watch the documentary called The Social Dilemma. It shows how social media companies contribute to this confirmation bias because their algorithms, the number one job of their algorithms is to keep you watching what they're doing. Their business model is to sell your attention span. So their job is to keep you tuned in. And so their algorithm will show you anything, true or false. They'll show you anything as long as that's the thing that's most predictably going to keep you logged in, right? So right or wrong, or maybe I should say right or left, this is more confirmation that what you believe, more confirmation of your existing beliefs. This is why the right is stuck in their thinking and the left is stuck in their thinking, which may or may not be true. So just consider this. After a multi-year investigation into political corruption, the verdict finally arrived. No indictments, no convictions. The sad part is I could be talking about one of many investigations. There's several, and there's pretty much always no indictments, no convictions. So for some people, this verdict confirms their belief that, see, I told you there was no corruption. For other people, this verdict confirms their belief that, see, corrupt politicians never get held accountable. They're guilty as heck. So if a congressional hearing doesn't change our beliefs, what does? Well, if you see a house that's got a bunch of cracks in the sheetrock and cracks in the ceiling and the house is starting to lean, what's the first thing you do? Check the foundation, right? Check the foundation. So to check the foundation of a belief, I just need to figure out what caused that belief, right? Where did that belief come from? What caused you to feel that way? So tool number 3 is we're going to bypass their confirmation bias and by finding their specific cause. Okay, so remember, more important than what they believe is why do they believe this? Why do they have this belief? So looking for their specific cause, I'm just going to say something like, yes, your house is beautiful. I'd love to sell it for $650. I'm curious. What specifically causes you to believe? And then fill in the blanks, right? So I might say, I'm curious, what specifically causes you to believe that your house will sell for $75,000 more than the same house right there on the corner? And then whoosh, be quiet. Give them plenty of space, give them plenty of time, let the awkward silence do the heavy lifting. So what did this question just do? Right? Hey, my house is special. It's so amazing. And I go, yeah, it's beautiful for sure. And I'm committed to getting you as much money as humanly possible. Definitely. And I'm curious, what specifically causes you to believe that a buyer is going to pay $75,000 more for this one than that one? So what did this question just do? It put the burden of proof on them. Now, instead of me convincing them that 575 is the right number, now they have to convince me that 650 is the right number. And if the evidence doesn't support 650, then they can't convince me, right? And hopefully they'll realize that they can't convince themselves either. So my commitment is not to convince anybody of anything. My commitment is I'm resolved to solve, right? I don't want to fight. I don't want to manipulate. I don't want those relationships. I want to help people solve those problems. So instead of attempting to convince anyone to think how I think, right, that's virtually impossible. I'm just going to focus on understanding their belief. That's it. And to let them try to sell me on, like, can they convince me? Right? Convincing doesn't usually work, almost never. And so I want to put that on them, and hopefully they'll self-discover that they don't have the evidence to support that. So here's what happens when you ask this question. I'm curious, what specifically causes you to believe that? Either you or the client is about to have a realization, right? So what specifically causes you to believe that a buyer will pay $75,000 more for your house than that house, and how could we get an appraisal, blah, blah, blah. Maybe the client will self-discover the concept of market pricing and comparable sales and supply and demand. Maybe the client will have an aha. Or maybe we'll learn that, oh, this house is on an acre. It's the only one in the neighborhood sitting on an acre. That whole lot comes with this house. Oh man, I missed that when I pulled the comps. Don't ask me how I know that example. So one of you is about to have an aha. And if it's me, right, if I miss something, I can fix it. Oh, wait, I didn't realize it was the lot. You're right. With an extra acre, the price is going to be different. Yep, 75,000. That seems like they're, well, 650. That's spot on. It might be when I include that extra acre. So the plan here is one of us is about to have a breakthrough, right? One of us is going to get it. So Debbie asked me to put a testimonial too in here. So here's one. So James is a broker in Texas. He sells 250, 300 sides a year. And then he trained with me. And then I just got this testimonial that says, I just want another listing using your method. And I was up against my top 2 competitors. It's very competitive where he is in just outside Austin. He says, helping the sellers self-discover their own market value. They argued their list price down in order to beat the other listings in the area. I just asked questions and listened and nodded in amazement. Selling's never been so easy. So let me tie all these together, all the stuff that we did. Let's stitch them all together. So secret number 1, learn their values. Understand what's driving that decision. Now it's not just, I want my price. Right now they want to retire and see their kids and travel the world. Now we have a much bigger, goal on the table. And then we're going to use agreement frames to create an open dialogue without making anybody wrong, right? I don't have to agree to 650, but I want to agree with their position to demonstrate that I'm not an adversary. I'm not trying to take over. They don't need to defend themselves. Right? If I say something that makes them defend themselves, I'm in trouble, right? We're no longer on the same team. And then step 3 is, in order to bypass their confirmation bias, simply find their specific cause, right? So one more. Let's say some of you might be thinking like, I already know how to do this. I'm good at asking questions. I'm a great salesperson. I have the gift of gab. I can sell ice cubes to an Eskimo. I'm good. I got it. Right? I might say, awesome. I'm curious, what's important to you about increasing your closing ratio and making more money? Or what's important to you about, working less and spending more time with your family and making the same or more money? Right? And you might say, I don't know, it would, if I could do that, I'd have more time with my family. I could invest more money. I could work less, right? So step 2, that was step 1, get the value. Step 2, I might agree, right? I agree. That's a beautiful goal. I want nothing more for you than for you to, have a life and not just, work until you die. Have a life, make enough money that you can take some downtime. And it's true. I agree. You don't need more training. You've made it this far. You don't have to do anything. And then step 3, I'm going to look for specific cause. I might say, what specifically causes you to believe that mastering this material won't be the very thing to cause a giant breakthrough in your production? Now, remember, I learned this the hard way. I was a nerd engineer I had a drafting table and I designed things and I had very little, social interaction at work. I was just building and designing and solving. That's it. So I was really good at being right. I was well documented and I was really good at being right. So I tried to convince people that I was right. And I was setting up scenarios where somebody had to be wrong. I spent a ridiculous amount of time and money and effort to learn how to do this, and I still missed sales over a little misunderstanding. I went on a bunch of listing appointments. I told people the truth on here's the market, this is what it looks like, and really, in a engineering sort of a way. And I didn't get the listing, and then they listed at a higher price with somebody else, and that house didn't sell. So that was a service to nobody. So I was working way too hard, super stressed, super burned out, not making much progress. By the way, burnout is working hard and making no progress. If you're working hard and making huge progress, no burnout. Then I learned the easy way. Focus on the client, figure out what's important to them, understand how and why they make the decisions they make. And then begin all of my responses or all of your responses with agreement frames. Keep the conversation friendly and productive. I don't want to fight and be defensive and make anybody else defensive. Use tools like specific cause to get to the core of their beliefs, right? That's when things get really easy. And then master some communication tools to help people self-discover without convincing, without pressure, without needing leverage, without attempting to manipulate. I hate that. I hate it when people try to do it to me and I'm not willing to do it to anybody else. And then lastly, grow your sales versatility so that you're dynamic, you're on the spot, doesn't matter what shows up. You could meet with anybody, anytime, and gain rapport and get into agreement on any topic. So a couple more testimonials. Most practical, useful training I've ever had. I've already transformed how I speak to myself. That's a big one. And then I'm the comm center in a stormy business of real estate. So my favorite testimonials are when people say, yeah, my business went up. I'm selling way more. I'm making more money. That's all true. But the crazy part is my spouse and I are getting along better. My kids and I are getting along better. Like, there's no more arguing and fighting. It's just things work out now. So yeah, that's my my perspective and my methodology on how to do this without resistance, without fighting, without arguing, any of that. So Debbie, are you still with us?
I am with you. Can you guys see me?
Of course you are.
Awesome. So, yep, we love this slide. It's our favorite. And I think it's because it's how we often feel when we learn new techniques. You know, they talk about being unconsciously competent, consciously competent, all the, competence. Well,
yep.
It's a big one. I mean, this is a big, powerful topic. And so I really hope that you guys have your 2 or 3 great action steps or takeaways. And we truly do believe that just the fact that you took the time, invested to be with us today, and, some of the things you've typed in the chat box, which are really fun to see, that you will go out and you will make the effort to use this. And yet, new things are often hard to implement, to develop those new habits and patterns until we get them locked in. So while we want you to go and use all of this and make it work for you, what if there was a better way? And, Joel, one of the things we always like to ask them at this point is, if we have your permission. And of course, if you don't want to hear it, you could always just hang up, right? I mean, that's an option, certainly. Sure. And yet, for those of you who would really like to go further, that would really like to master these techniques and many more, we have a new advanced training program, and it is called Persuaded. So with your permission, and if you want to type that in the chat box, yes, it's okay, go right ahead. I'll take just 5 minutes and I'll go through this very quickly. And I'll do it quickly because I know Joel is planning to stay on with you and answer questions you have about the program. Also, though, to role play some objections and any questions you had about today's subjects. Okay, so please feel free to stay on just for a few more moments so he can give you guys a little extra help. So let me tell you quickly about Persuaded. It is 16 weeks of persuasive training. Now, these sessions are 1 hour a week, and Joel's going to do what he did today, only more, right? He's going to go deeper. He'll be able to flesh out those concepts and topics for you. Joel, it's live sessions, so they can type in the chat box, right, as you're on with them.
Yes, and they can just ask questions via voice as well.
Okay, great. So open Zoom. So these are happening in real time. You can participate. When we look at the value of Joel's time and what he's charged for programs like this in the past to private groups, it truly is a $3,000 value. And you're going to have 12 weeks with Joel, and then you're going to have 4 weeks with Ben and I, where we're going to dive into some additional topics. Now, the thing I think is also the magic here is, in addition to that first session of the week, if you choose to join it, at the end of the week, you're going to have practice with Joel. So if you want to see how that goes, stay on, right? Stay on today for a few minutes, because Joel is going to practice, answer some of the objections that you guys may want to throw in the chat box. And so remember, you'll be live with Joel. You'll be able to throw your objection out to the group. You guys work on those together. And all of these sessions are recorded. So if you're worried about your schedule and you might miss a session here or there, of course, we'd like you to attend them live if you can, but you will be able to catch up. And again, that's an additional 16 weeks of $3,000 value. And Joel's created some terrific cheat sheets for you, because we need a template, right? You leave the call. What are the techniques? What are the cheat sheets, so you can go out and actually make that happen? Joel, if you'll go ahead and move us to the next slide, please. So Joel, let's tell them, you go ahead, you're the instructor. What are the skills that you feel you're going to help them develop in this program?
Yeah, so one of the things that's been key for me is how do I manage difficult people and difficult conversations and difficult arguments? How do I get through that? And then, how do we hold our ground and set up win-wins and tough negotiations? How do we fight for our client without things going sideways? But one of the things that I think is the most fun is learning how to transform an objection into an agreement. Right? That's the whole goal of learning objection handling, is what I really want are agreements. And objections are misunderstandings at some level.
Right.
And then how to boost your charisma such that you can flow with anybody. You could have a grumpy old, senior citizen, or, somebody who's cussing like a sailor. And it doesn't matter who shows up. So the goal is to be flexible enough to close anybody. And then how to step over that reflex no, right? That like, oh, telemarketer, how to not cause that to happen. So, all right, back to you.
Yeah. And the course schedule, I think, Joel, we start next Tuesday, right? So
We do, next week.
Yeah, next Tuesday at 11:30 Pacific. We were really fortunate that Bob was able to allow us to do this for you today. So if you have an interest, you will be able to join us. And it's Tuesdays at 11:30 Pacific for the 16 weeks of training calls, Thursday at 8:30 a.m. Pacific. And again, everything will be recorded. So if you need to re-listen or you cannot attend, we do not have another course scheduled soon because of the things we do here at Forward and the things that Joel has going on in his life. We're only able to offer this just a very few times a year. So if you really want to jump in, now's the time, right? Because we won't have another one for a few months into the future. Now, if you would like to join us today and you are not currently a Forward coaching client, you can join us for only $199 a month. Now, if you want to prepay, which I'd say 98% of the people do, they prepay for the full amount, and then we give you a discount, right? So that, because it's easier on our accounting team. So we want to pass that savings along to you. So that would be $597 one-time fee for the full 16 weeks. Now, if you'd like to join us now, you just go to persuaded.forwardcoaching.com. Now, if you are a Forward coaching client, and you can see the link there, Taylor just popped it up in the chat box for you. If you are a Forward coaching client, we want to give you a members discount. So if you choose to join us today, $159 a month. And if you prefer to make the one payment, which most people do, it's $477. So we gave you a members discount. And for you, the link is persuaded.forwardcoaching.com/go client. Now, don't worry. If you accidentally get in the wrong link, we will help you sort it out later. So just get in the link, get registered so you can join us on Tuesday. And when you join us today, we have some great videos. Joel is so phenomenal at his objection handling, which if you guys to choose to, stay on in a few minutes and just have some fun role play, you'll get a bit more of a sample. He has put together a training video. This one is the gift that keeps on giving for sure. $500 value, absolutely, and even more. And that will be your bonus when you choose to join us, and you will get that as part of your program. I also put together a session for you, really how to look at your own personality, your sales charisma, and identify the 5 best sources of lead generation. Because when you do things that fit you, you're just so much more likely to actually do them. And then we add on top of that magic, now you're such a masterful communicator that no one scares you. Every call becomes more fun because you've got the scripts and the techniques that you need. And
hey, Debbie, I'm going to jump in. I'd like to say one thing about that. So
Sure.
I've been talking about resistance-free sales.
Mm-hmm.
This bonus number 2 is a way for you to get rid of your internal resistance, right?
Yes.
If there's some lead gen source that you just, I hate it. right? You have all this internal resistance. You're not going to do it. So
Right.
this is matching you to the things that are matched to your personality style. So you don't have all that internal conflict. This is a
Right.
brilliant, brilliant bonus that you definitely want to have that one. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's the whole platform of forward coaching, which is you are a puzzle, you are unique, your market's unique, your talents are unique. And when you find that right click of those activities and add the magic of communication on the top, it just becomes so much easier.
Yeah.
And I noticed, and thank you, Greg, for asking about a team program. Yes, we do have special pricing if you're bringing an entire team to the group. And so Taylor's typing some things in the chat box to answer your questions. And Joel, they do have access to the course for 45 days after completion. That way, if they had to take a vacation or something happened and they missed a session, or you even would like to go back and review, right? Which is a terrific idea to do that. So bonus number 3, a big one. And Joel, I really appreciate you. I don't expect you to answer their emails at 11 o'clock at night. However, Taylor told me you have been. And this is an amazing bonus where Joel has graciously volunteered that if you have questions or circumstances going on in your world, you need to ask him a question. How can his, skill help you? You just send him an email in between, but let's make it clear. I don't expect him to email you back at 11 o'clock at night. So within 24 hours in the business day, and if it's a really big, juicy topic, he may email you back and say, hey, join me on the Q&A call. I'm going to put this at the top of the list. And I really want to be able to dive in there because doing an email is not going to do this justice. Okay, but please feel free to share that. Joel, I did ask you to put a few of your client stories and testimonials like, Brandon Green, who's a top agent and, talks about just, in fact, the one deal that he used the technique that turned that all around, which is, $27,000 commission, right? Yep. And I would say, though, we hope it would not ever be your thought to just get one extra deal. Now, if you did, it'd more than pay for the course. However, I wanted to create lots of extra transactions. That would absolutely be my goal for you. And one of the reasons we also shared those stories, not just because we'd love to have you join us in the course, I think it's helpful to know it actually works. These are real people with real life situations, just like you're facing. And Joel, I think that's part of the fun too on the Q&A calls. Yeah. That people are going to bring up situations, questions, and scenarios, and everyone can identify with those issues. And so I know just leaving that has created some transactions from our last group.
Absolutely.
So just quick review, then I'm going to turn you over to Joel for some fun role play. So 16 weeks of persuasive language training, an hour a week. That's on Tuesdays. And then that'll be 12 weeks with Joel, 4 weeks with Ben and I. And then you'll have your additional 16 weeks of live practice. We've got the cheat sheets ready to go. We've got Joel's objection handling basic. Is that video or audio? It's a video, right, video. Joel? Yeah, video. And then the Debbie on Demand session, email access to Joel. And if you put that whole package together, if you were not part of our world, you are some of the clients that Joel has represented in the past privately, this would be a package that could cost as much as $7,250. And yet for you, the very special price, as you know, of $597 if you choose to do that one-time payment. And then don't forget, if you're a client, you got even better pricing. And if you're a team, you can reach out to us. So Joel, they may actually have some questions too. Sure. That they can type in the chat box about what they'll learn or how the course works. So guys, please feel free to type that in the chat box if you want to ask Joel questions. But then also, if there's a particular technique you learned today, you have a question about, type it in the chat box. If there's an objection you'd like some help with, Joel wants to give you a little extra bonus time, go right ahead and type that in the chat box. And if you need to go get to work, but you want to join us, do it now while you're thinking about it. And then my team will get all your information out so that you're ready to go for the class on Tuesday. And thank you guys so much for joining us. And Joel, I'm going to get out of the way and turn them over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Debbie. And yeah, thanks. So if you have a question or comment, please fire it in the chat box. One showed up already that I thought was really interesting. And I want to say it was Henry that asked this question. He said, wow, what, now you're just going to sound like a yes man to the client. Yeah, you're just going to say yes to everything. By the way, if you haven't seen it, the movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey is brilliant, hysterical. So yeah, if no matter what the client said, if I went, yep, yep, 650, yep, yep, no problem, I'll take it, yep, yeah, that's definitely a yes man. The difference here is they say, well, I want to move to Colorado, or I only want to offer, I only want to offer 300. I know it's listed at 550, but I want to offer 300 as is. And I'm not going to say yes, I'm going to say, great, I totally get that you want a great deal. And let's take a look at some comparables, or let's take a look at it this way. So instead of saying yes to everything, I'm not going to say, yes, I think 650 is the magic number. Yes, I think 300 is the right offer. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, oh, excellent. Yeah, thanks for sharing that with me. So what if we looked at it like this? Or thanks for sharing that with me. I'm confused. Explain to me how this is going to be. So I'm just opening. I'm not really saying yes to that I agree with their position. I'm just not beginning by saying, no, wait a minute, that's a dumb offer. That's not going to work. I'm just not taking the negative side. I may not say no to their complete position. My goal is to just not be, I just want to not be the opposition. So thanks, Henry. That's great distinction. Thank you. And then let's see what else is in here. Teams. Yeah, we have a crazy, ridiculous discount for Teams. So Taylor put the link in the chat box. And if we miss a live training is available. Yes, everything's recorded. Do you get recordings after this? Yep. 45 days after you can review. I strongly recommend that if you miss a call, that you listen to it as quick as you can, because it's done in layers in a specific order for a specific intention. And if you miss one, pick up the one that you missed so you don't get out of order, right? You'll get lost pretty quick. What else? As soon as I wrap up some other trainings, I'm signing up for this for sure. Oh, nice. Thank you, Darcy. Joel is a phenomenal instructor. Oh, you've done something with me. Awesome. Thank you for the kind words. And Ben and Debbie, yeah, Ben and Debbie don't need any introduction. They're both, yeah, in the next level. So from Kathy, a cold call that has never been contacted about real estate before, opening statement to engage them. Yeah, so two things. It depends on where the lead came from. If it's if you're just dead cold and you're moved into a new city and you're somebody said, can you repeat the time on Tuesday? Probably. Probably. There you go. Tuesday's 11:30, Thursday's 8:30. So if you're moving into a new area and you're just, 100% cold, then the most important thing that we can do is to think first in terms of the client, the prospect, and think first in terms of rapport. So more important than what you say is how you say it. So let's go back to the example of the telemarketer. So this should say, yeah, thanks, Taylor, 11:30 and 8:30 a.m. Pacific time. So go back to the telemarketer. So you get a phone call from a telemarketer and you get this like, hey, this is Chip from AT&T and I'm calling back your long distance service. So is it important what they say? What is it that turns you off about that telemarketer? Is it the script that they're using, or is it the way they're talking to you? I think more important than the script is the way they're talking to you. So if you're calling just dead cold, then pay super close attention to the way in which they answer, right? So if you call in and they say, hello? And I say, hey, this is Joel at Keller Williams. I'm calling about that house, right? It's not going to work. But if they say hello, and I say hello, I'm calling to share with you that I listed a house for sale in your neighborhood, right? So the most important thing about calls that are just cold is focus on rapport. So why is it that we think some people are great and some people are obnoxious? Because some people talk like us. If somebody talks twice as fast as you, we assume that they're slick and they're trying to pull one over on us. If they speak at a fraction of the speed that you speak, we automatically assume that there's something wrong with them and they're not up to speed and they're slow. So really focus on just being connected with whoever that is, right? And if you think that's silly, then remember the last time that you got to say hello to a little tiny infant and they went, what did you do? Right? So there's something about being in rapport and seeing something similar and familiar that has us feel at ease. We are tribal. Human beings are tribal animals. And we've been indoctrinated for thousands and thousands of generations that what is familiar, familia, family, what is familiar is safe. And what is not familiar is dangerous. So that's absolutely the place to focus. So anybody else? Questions, comments, anything? Thank you. Oh, thank you, Kathy. Thank you for the question. Anybody else? Questions, comments, love letters, hate mail, examples, objections, anything while we're here? All right. I think I'm going to scroll through these. I think I got them all. I think. Yep. Access, team cost. If we miss a training, we did that. Special for the team. The yes man. I think I covered all those. I think. All right. If I missed it, shoot us a message. I'm happy to answer it in the near future.
Joel, can I throw you one last curveball? Because I feel so bad about Eden here. He's asked the same question twice. Eden says his last name is Trump, and he wants to know what he does or how he engages with people that are giving him some level of vitriol simply over the fact of his last name. Did you have any thoughts or opinions on that? It's such a fascinating question.
Yeah. Well, first of all, sorry, I missed that. I was,
it was the very first thing. It was very at the way top. And then a bunch of, I think you asked the yes, no questions and they flooded the box and Eden's question got lost, but.
Gotcha. Okay. So Eden, E-D-A-N, Eden. Wow. Cool name. So Eden's last name is Trump, for those of you that didn't catch it. And sadly, half the people in the country love that name and the other half, hate that name. So that's a terrible thing for him that half the people are going to judge him based on his name. So what I would do if my last name was Trump is I would introduce myself. If my name was Joel Trump, I would say, hi, nice to meet you. Well, first of all, if you're making cold calls, you should just say, hi, this is Eden. Right? They don't need your last name right out of the gate. They're not going to remember it anyways. I don't think they remember mine. But when you introduce yourself in a place where you do need to use your last name, I would do it like the principal on, if you guys watch the cartoon Rick and Morty, watch the principal. So he introduces himself and he would, in Eden's case, he'd say, hi, I'm Eden Trump, no relation. And just get it off the table, right? Eden Trump, I'm not related.
Yeah, that's good and quick, Joel. Look at it. Joel, I called that a curveball because I thought that maybe your knees might buckle a little bit, but you just stepped right in there and stroked that one out of the park. That's fantastic. Eden, I can't think of a better way to handle that. Like, right. And
that's the thing that that's the thing that drove me to do this kind of work, because, I don't have any memorized scripts, zero. I didn't have that. I'm just kind of thinking my way through things, but I do have a sizable tool chest of a whole bunch of powerful tools. So it doesn't matter what shows up. I have all these tools and I'm practiced on solving things. So I was at a listing appointment a few years ago, and for the first time in my career, I got an objection that I had never gotten before. And I was like, what? Like, that didn't make any sense to me. So I followed pretty much the criteria that we did on the call today. I said, that's interesting. So what's important about that to you? Oh, what would that do? Okay, yeah, I totally get your point. And have you considered this? So all I did was this little process. and I overturned an objection that was, something I'd never heard of before. So yeah. And that's
Haley makes a good,
yep.
Haley's comment is to use these techniques. It feels like you kind of have to be practiced in these things. I think, the why is that important to you, or what's important about that to you? That feels like you could kind of slide into that one pretty easy, right? As just kind of a,
yeah.
But Joel, I mean, clearly you need to practice. You need to think about these things. You learn them once, you learn them twice, you learn them a third time. Like they're not going to turn around tomorrow, and these people aren't going to be using all these strategies as effectively as you've been able to deploy them, right?
Yeah. So on something like the criteria questions, what's important about that? There's several of those. I just did one today. But I opened this 12 weeks by using the example from the Karate Kid. For all those of you that saw the original Karate Kid, he talks this old guy into teaching him how to do karate, and the guy says, come over, and he ends up waxing the car, and the guy's like, put wax on like this and take the wax off like that, and paint the fence and sand the floor. And the kid's doing all these like exercises, like, what the hell am I doing? What am I doing? And it turns out that he was learning blocking techniques and striking techniques. He was learning all this stuff and didn't even realize it. So the curriculum is like that. We start really easy. We do one technique, 2 techniques at a time. You practice those techniques with your family, with your kids. And then next week we layer on another tool and another tool and another tool. And before you know it, you have all these tools and you have all this, fluid practice.
Without the backbreaking work of sanding the fence and or painting the fence and sanding the floor, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're going to have to memorize a script, and that script only works when it works. The tricky part about scripts is the client doesn't have a copy of your script, right? So they make left turns and they do whatever they want, and all of a sudden you're like, now what do I do? So yeah, I want to just be able to. Now that I have these tools and I'm not trying to think about, okay, when I hear commission, I say this. When I hear list with a friend, I say this, right? That has me being in my head and not present with the client. Now that I have these tools, I can authentically listen to people, and whatever they say, I'm okay with it. That's it. Because I have all these tools and I'm good at solving these communication issues. So that's kind of how I see it.
Glenda asks, this is very particular, and she said, what is a better way to say downsize to a multi-million-dollar seller? Right size? Is that, I don't know, Joel, you have another word for downsize? Or I think the idea there is Glenda doesn't want to make these, like you're downsizing, right? Is there another word? Right size? I don't know, would be something that I might think of.
That's a good question. I've not heard that before. So downsize, you could say, yeah, I would just say, let me think about that. You could say normalize. Maybe they don't want to be normal. Maybe you could say streamline.
Yeah, streamline.
Maybe streamline.
Consolidate. That's a good.
Consolidate, streamline.
Simplify. There's a good one, Greg.
Like be more effective, be more efficient. Something like that. Yeah, something like that.
All right, Joel, Rico, you're amazing, man. And you can tell it's really obvious as I sit here, and this isn't the first time I've had the pleasure, but you've been doing this a while, right? And but I think the cool thing, and Debbie said it up front, all of Ben's teams, or not everybody yet, but the majority of our leadership anyway, of our expansion teams have all been through your classes. Ben's been a student of yours for quite some time, and if you guys decide to get involved with Joel here and do the full course, you are absolutely going to find benefit. So take advantage of the offer while it's here. Joel, any final words for everybody?
Thank you all for being here. Thank you for all the great questions. I can do the presentation like this, in dead air space, which is terrible, but your interaction, your questions, that makes it so much more fun for me. So thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. And this thing launches next week, next Tuesday. So if you're interesting, if you think this is going to help you close an extra deal a year, an extra deal a month, help you save a deal that would have fallen apart, then, sign up quick. We're launching Tuesday. So thank you guys for being here. Bob, thanks for having me, man.
Hey, Joel, it's always my pleasure. Hopefully you get out on that orange snowboard back there behind you here real soon, my friend, for one of your passions.
Great for snow.
Appreciate you. We'll talk to you soon, Joel. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. Thank you, everybody. Yep. See you next time. Be well.